I'm here in San Diego, and we're on with James Moss, who's with us today in New York. This is Curzon Comments, and James is the man, and he is Mr. Curzon. And we're just discussing off camera here, just discussing Mardi Gras, which is today. And so, what are you doing out there? Wearing beads?
Oh yeah,
So we were just
yeah,
talking about the celebration. So
yes,
let's continue the conversation before we get into property stuff.
yeah. Well, we're just recapping that. Mardi Gras is a great party, huge event, particularly here in the States, and obviously places like in South America and so on.
Right,
In
the carnival. Yeah,
the carnival, yeah, exactly. Do they do Mardi Gras in San Diego? So something.
only in the bars.
Okay, all right, all right. So the English British version is pancakes. It's Shrove Tuesday
Yeah,
is today, which is a certain starting date of the run up to Easter.
yeah,
I mean, no one's particularly religious in the UK or the Church of England, but for kids it's great because it's when pancakes, which are like French pancakes, sort of crepes, are
yeah,
made, lots of sugar and lemon juice and so on, and it's a really nice festive, fun way of sort of seeing the end of winter as well. As we sort of head into the spring. So,
yeah. Well, so we're going downstairs to here in the condo development. They're having a happy hour, Mardi
uh,
Gras happy hour at 5 p.m. California time. Which coincides with President Trump's speech.
perfect timing, perfect timing.
So
Watch for, uh,
I'll miss that.
yeah, no, watch that extra 25% go onto your tequila tonight. It's going to be really exciting, and I wouldn't have any guacamole if I was you, because that's going to be another 25% tariff going on that. And
Yeah.
you're thinking of buying a lorry from Mexico. I'd put that on hold for a while.
So the thing
Truck.
is that it's probably because Wall Street's down, it's probably a buying opportunity.
Yeah, I think it could be. I guess I guess the big question, and it's great that we're chatting about this now because it runs through everything that you and I do together. Um, I guess the big question is how long is this all going to last? And it's not just tariffs, it's the tariff situation, it's the terrible situation going on in the Ukraine, and the disruption that that's going to have in Europe and globally. And then you've got the China tariffs as well. And we have the Canadian tariffs going on, which is really going to hit, I think, the building industry in the United States very hard. And then, of course, we've got this wonderful property development to look forward to in the Gaza Riviera. So,
Oh, yes,
so there's
yes, right.
some really exciting things going on.
Yeah,
Um,
challenging for sure.
yeah,
Um, so let's get into property, you know.
property. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yes. So uh, they're not making any more of it. So
yeah.
they're maybe going to create some in Gaza, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
Yeah, Gaza. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get political because I don't believe, we're not, in a political conversation here. But there's stuff going on which just, frankly, doesn't stack up from an economic or a property point of view. And the things that feed into property and relocation, I mean, but sticking to property for a second, are things like the supply chain. I mean, the vast majority of lumber, building lumber in the United States actually comes from Canada. So, the president's of the view that there's enough lumber in the UK, or the UK and the US, excuse me, to sort of take care of any shortfall in terms of building. I'm not quite sure where he got that statistic from, but things like that are going to have a big impact in the supply of housing in the United States. Um,
It'll be more expensive.
it's going to be a lot more expensive, and there's going to be a lot less of it because with costs going up, the math simply is going to be much harder to work in terms of developers and investors. And the build costs are going to rise. At the same time as you've got pressure going on inflation. So it just happens that US and UK inflation are both at about 3% at the moment. But that's the pressure's going to be for inflation to go up, not to go down. And that in turn means that there's going to be pressure on interest rates to rise and not to fall. And that in turn is going to have a significant impact on the world's economy, and very much so on the global stock markets. So you can sort of see we're moving into this very visual, vis, visual, vicious, upwardly spiraling cycle of increased prices, pressure for interest rates to go up, and increase obviously on inflation is all within that sort of that mix there.
So I don't
Um,
want to be a harbinger of bad news or anything, but uh, for
yeah,
those of us who are familiar with history, American history, business history,
sure.
um, in 1928, 29, there was, I forget the exact name of it, Smoot Harley, or there was tariff war uh, that sparked the Great Depression in the U.S.
Right.
And it just scared the heck out of everybody, and in the stock market business anyway, and it crashed.
Yeah, sure.
Almost the same thing is happening right now. And it's
Yeah.
not intentional, it's just that they're playing games, big power games, and the system is diverse, but it's also fragile.
Yeah. You're so right. And the one of the big things about the crash in 29 is that there is no protection for the consumer on bank collapsing, and the implementation on banks' reserves didn't really exist then. So when the banks went down, everybody went down. Simple as that. Um, Today, banks have to have capital reserves put to one side, and on percentage terms, they don't actually seem very big. They're sort of 3 to 5% sort of region. And that's just very general. I'm sure there's some high and there's maybe a few that are a bit lower. But the point is, you sort of got to ask yourself, is that going to be enough? If there is another failing of the banks, is there going to be enough for them to weather the storm? Um, Again, we look at 2008, and the big question was, are you too big to fail? And they decided that with Lehman's wasn't too big to fail. But they decided the other banks were too big to fail. They didn't want to have a domino effect. So effectively, the federal government stepped in, and other governments stepped in to rescue them. In the UK, the governments were, going in and basically buying out the banks, taking major shareholding position in the banks. So what you're saying, I think, is absolutely right. we're moving into this incredibly dangerous area on multiple fronts. I mean, it's not just one thing. It's not just
Yeah, there's a
tariffs.
convergence.
Yeah,
There's a convergence of all these things that we're not used to, and we don't. A lot of people don't like, and and are concerned. And uh, there's a slowdown.
yeah, and it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. I mean, the worst thing for stock markets, and the world's not all about stock markets,
Yeah, there's
but stock,
uncertainty, right?
yeah, it's uncertainty.
Yeah.
And if there's uncertainty, not just in stock markets, but in the housing markets, in consumer markets, people stop doing things. They just don't do things because they don't know what the consequences will be. And often the thinking is it's better to keep the money in your pocket where you know you've got it and it's safe, metaphorically, than going out and spending it. And you go back to Ronald Reagan's era here. It was interesting. It was the American consumer that saved the economy. The message was going spend, spend, spend. And they did. And it's great. It's great when that happens. But no one's going to be doing that with all these increasing costs, not just across, the obvious consumer goods, but things like, automobiles, automobile parts. And it's very interesting. You read about automobile parts in the auto industry that the parts themselves will go through several different borders in the supply chain mechanism before they actually arrive where they got to arrive to be assembled. So it's not as though you're getting 25% here and 10% there. You're sort of collecting as you go along, and you're double and triple paying for these things. So then what will happen? People will stop buying cars. I mean, just get on with with the car you've got. The knock-on effect of all of this could really be pretty catastrophic, um, particularly if it's allowed to roll on.
So we're talking here again with James Moss, who's now in New York. As you could tell, he's a Brit. And I'm originally from Boston, but I kind of hide that accent as much as possible, although Joanne doesn't think I do. So anyway, the um, so tell me, what do you think with Europe seemingly coming together to take care of build their own nest and
Yeah.
to do more? What's the likelihood of London rejoining, UK rejoining Europe?
Well, it's an excellent question, and the Ukraine.
Timing is everything. Boy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, to sort of answer your question in a slightly roundabout way, the happenings between and the White House and the Ukraine over the last few days,
Hmm.
it's acted very much as a catalyst for Europe and the UK. The UK, Sir Keir Starmer seems to have become the link man between the states and the EU, which is sort of interesting, as well as the Ukraine. I mean, the Ukraine obviously are the ones who are going to suffer most if the Americans do totally pull out. The Americans provide something like 70% of armaments and supplies and resources to the Ukraine. The rest is made up of little bits here and there from the EU and the UK. So, to answer your question now directly, would the UK rejoin the EU? I think the answer is no, not in a technical sense, because I think it's gone past that stage. Um, and sort of Brexit is Brexit, and I think everyone has accepted that. I personally don't see why you couldn't unwind it. I mean, I don't think that necessarily would be such a bad thing. And I think the current government, in a way, is trying to do that sort of through the back door. Um, but there are certain impediments to that, like freedom of movement, of free movement of labor, and stuff like that, which is a bit of a hot potato to mix again to put in a metaphor in there. But the other thing to say is that the EU will have their own agenda and their own demands as to their conditions for the UK to join the EU. And I think a number of those conditions will be unacceptable. So the Court of Human Rights, the sort of Brussels override on legislation and so forth, I think will be, the UK will be very unlikely to swallow that. A trade deal is desperately needed and desperately wanted by both sides, by the way, by both sides. So could the UK rejoin the EU? Maybe in a sort of roundabout way, in a trade way, and so on. The other thing to say is the EU have moved very much to the right. Okay, they're very much have seen a big shift to sort of right-wing politics, whereas UK is actually much more middle of the road, forward slash to the left. So you've got this political um, doctrinarian divide going on there as well. Um, and just to add two other things. Firstly, NATO. UK is, of course, a member of NATO. So you've got the NATO thing. The other thing is the UK will not buy into the euro. The UK will want to maintain the pound sterling, which is a strong, resolute currency and gives us economic independence and so forth. So, to go back to the way it was is not going to happen, I don't think. But I think there will be a way forward. And I think current governments working quite diligently and well, I assume somewhat effectively to moving in UK into a better position.
Right. So let's talk about what you're doing with Curzon Central and getting ready to spring forward and
Right.
with with
Exactly.
all this action I've been reading about with Curzon Central doing things. Well, you were just in Dubai and London, and you've been in LA, and then I'm back to New York now,
Yeah.
and you've joined up with the British American Business Council. Yep.
Yes, the British American Business, I guess it's an association. I'm not quite sure what they call themselves at the end. Simply known as British American Business. British American Business is an excellent organization. It really is about nurturing transatlantic commerce and goodwill.
Yeah, and
Um,
and it's sort of like in sync with FDI, foreign direct investments.
yeah, yeah, it is. It very much is like that. It's investment driven, very trade driven across the board. Politically, it's very well connected, which is really, really good. It ties in with the British consulate here in the US, the consulates across the US. They're very involved on the other side, with the American equivalent to that, the American embassy, and sort of soft side of diplomacy, if you like. Um, they're very professional. Their membership I like a lot. You meet very high caliber people there. So lawyers, accountants, major companies and smaller companies. But one of the things I really like about it is meeting companies who, haven't yet come to the States, but are looking at coming to the States. Um, medium-sized SME types of companies, often technology orientated, which of course we're very tech sort of savvy, and it's a very comfortable space for us as well. Um, so yes, they're a very good high level cross the pond. I always think it's a terrible cliche of the pond, but transatlantic. They really work very well. They work really hard. The caliber of their people is absolutely excellent. I know their team in the States, both in New York and DC. I know the London team, which is excellent. And they really work at connecting people and ideas. So yes, so that's yeah. So the British American business membership really, in a way, demonstrates our sort of the opening up, the broadness of approach that Curzon Central is now taking. So Curzon Central and Curzon Relocation very much work hand in glove because we handle people, we handle property and people moving and companies moving, and we put the two together. We're also super experienced in business, in operating in the United States, in operating in the UK and London. Our network of contacts just keeps getting better and better, Ed, which is terrific. Um, so I wouldn't say we know everybody, but we know a lot of professionals in the right place at the right time who have
So
the
you
right
can get things
attitude.
done for people.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Well, that's so good. So let's talk about what slides you might want to display here on this program, if any, or if you just want to continue chatting.
I'm afraid I'm slideless again, and we'll have to edit this bit out. But no, I'm afraid I haven't got slides. It's interesting though. I've just put a newsletter together, and the beginning of the month, all the newsletters go out. We've quite a few of them. We have a general sort of relocation one that goes out. We have certain targeted ones that go out specifically to help people relocating into New York and London. We have private client newsletters go out, which are focused on working with private clients in London and New York. And what we're seeing there, it's quite interesting. What we're seeing there is more and more of a crossover. Um, so for example, Americans are looking for pied-à-terres or looking to go and spend more time in London. We're quite a good sounding out board for those people. Um, so we do, as you know, we do the corporate relocation. We move executives and assignees around, but the private clients are actually really great. And we tend to be dealing with wealthy New Yorkers and New York metro types.
So
Because,
that is your superpower.
sorry.
That's your superpower, quote unquote. Yeah, of dealing with private clients of that level.
Well, it's a market that we've always dealt with, to be honest with you. We've always dealt with that in London, UK. Not just Brits. I would stress that those clients tend to be very international. So our London market, private client business, which is over 25 years old now, has comprised, British expats, for example, from from the States, from the Middle East, from Asia, Singapore, places like that. Um, we've also moved. I wouldn't say loads because there's been an exaggeration, but an awful lot of Americans. We've always been great at working with Americans because we understand America, or at least most Americans, I think. Um, and so, so we have a really good rapport with them, and we can sort of translate the legalities, the language, the costs. We can sort of put everything in perspective. So, we can talk about mansion tax in New York versus how the stamp duty equivalent mansion taxes work in the UK.
Hmm.
Um, we also work with financial accountants and specialists who specialize in like the finances and the legals of both countries, which is really useful. So we've got people here, professionals here in New York who can help out. We have professionals in London who can help out. Um, it's it's sort of been a bit like a middleman in a way, which is
Right,
fine,
right.
sort of
You're a
connecting people,
connector.
a connector, yeah. So we,
Yeah,
but the
fascinating.
yeah, it's a great market, the private client market, and we're doing more with international students and their families. And as we get into the year, there'll be more of that going on. That's always a great market, a fun market, an interesting market to be in.
So I thank you very much for Curzon comments again. I think this is number 4 or 5. I
Yeah, I
lost.
think we're hitting five now, maybe.
Yeah, right, right. And so let's think about doing another one, number 6, when you get into March more. And w- things are going to be very different. Here it is, early March, and 2 weeks out is St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, be
I mean,
great.
and the
Always fun.
first day of spring, and and then changing the clocks, so there'll be more daylight, and that's always a good thing for me, anyway.
Yeah, I think the clocks go back this weekend, or go forward. Sorry, March
Yeah, yeah,
forward, spring
spring
forward, back,
forward.
yeah,
Yeah,
spring
yeah.
forward. It's also what else have we got going on, which is interesting. We have the final games of the Rugby Six Nations, which is British and French and Italian rugby tournament. Um,
I
uh,
have not watched one of those.
ah,
Yeah.
you'll have to come over to my place and watch the game together. You'll love it.
I would love to do that, but
We've got
nothing,
that. Yeah,
no trip planned yet, but we'll do that.
yeah. No, we do that. I see the baseball players warming up in Florida. So it's spring is around the corner. Thank goodness. It's great.
Yes, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for talking with me and the audience.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. It's always fantastic. Always great.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, I wish you well
Great.
and happy Mardi Gras.
Thank you. Happy Mardi Gras.
Adios. Thank you.